Mr. Morse.
Tonight's a difficult night for our community. Under the guise of inclusivity, we are taking action on a policy that's unnecessary, it's ambiguous, it's divisive, it's anti-family, anti-privacy, anti-teacher, and it's inconsistent with VHSL, our sporting authority. What that means to Loudoun County community is it detracts from our focus on education, and most importantly, it hurts all of our children. All of our children who need to be protected. That's contrary to comments from another board member. We've all listened to hundreds of comments through email, voicemail. Some of them are so offensive you can't even imagine. Most of them directed at the chair. None of them should we have to tolerate. But there are a lot of good reasons and a lot of good messages and a lot of important information that our constituency is providing to us. So let's move past the rhetoric and let's address the issues and concerns and let's clear up some misconceptions. Tonight, one of our board members says it's only about the kids. That's absolutely not true either. It's about the kids, it's about teachers and staff, and it's about parents. And I'm going to come back to that one. So unneeded. It's unneeded because if you are an LCPS student today, you are protected from bullying, from harassment, or from abuse. That is already in code, it's already policy, and we strongly support that. The board will protect you to the best of our ability. With the approval of this policy, we are establishing a precedence of individual victimization policies. We've created a new burden on staff and the board of identifying each and every insecurity. We don't have policies for every marginalized group, and we can't get there. So now we think we can drive home the solution in a policy that's going to resolve this issue. We don't. We don't focus on resiliency, which is where we need to focus. We should be providing counseling. That's critical. We have invested enormous amounts to increase our ratio of counselors to students. With resiliency, with the counseling, and with the protections that we have in place today, all of our students are on the path to success. Ambiguous. How long must a child demonstrate their sexual identity? It's nowhere in policy. What is the definition of questioning? And how is it legally applied? What does plus mean? And how is that legally applied? Does it mean that there are other categories not yet defined that we're protecting? So legally, where does that leave this board? Vulnerable. Here are 5 ambiguous statements from the model policy that came out of VDOE. A student is considered transgendered if, at school, the student consistently asserts a gender identity different from the sex assigned at birth. What does consistently asserted mean? Who assigned sex at birth? I'm going with God because that's what I believe. Number 2, declaration of gender identity does not necessarily require any substantiating evidence, nor any required minimum duration. But to justify the claim that a student can be asked to provide information that supports the request. Isn't an information request the same as substantiating evidence? Number 3, established gender identity can present differently. What does that mean? Does that mean that we have to provide different venues and different responses? Because that's nowhere. That's somewhere else that we're going to need to address. Number 4, how can non-binary and transgendered students use multiple sets of pronouns under different situations, different moods? Are we legislating this? And I'm not being facetious. I'm genuinely interested in trying to figure out how we're going to navigate through this. Number 5, in the situation when parents and guardians of a minor student under the age of 18 do not agree with the student's request to adopt a new name and pronouns, school divisions will need to determine whether to respect the student's request or abide by the parent's wishes or an alternate that respects both the parent and the student. At least the model policy included parents. But based on LCPS's policy and based on staff's comments at the last board meeting, Parents don't need to be notified. So taken to an extreme, you have a 7-year-old that can make a decision that'll have lifelong implications, and the school has the authority to keep the parents in the dark. Divisive. The rights of a few hundred students will trump the rights of 80,000. They're all together. We're not pitting one group against the other. All the students have their challenges, and it's all wrapped in a COVID blanket right now, and we're making it even harder. Yesterday, a speaker from the Community Levy Association told us how they approached this topic. They came up with real compromises. They got both sides of the discussion together, and they provided meaningful solutions, one of which we just voted and approved. Thank you, Mr. Sirotkin. That's helpful, because that's a solution that we all agreed on. But nobody was looking for agreement. Everyone was posturing in their own position and unwilling to negotiate. Divisive when a speaker attacks parents with a comment about their hate that seems to be dripping off the followers of Jesus. Divisive when a Facebook group starts a hit list against their own community members, asking for information on spouses, on jobs, even information on children of their neighbors, so that they can plot against them. And when school board members are in that Facebook group but don't have the courage to stand here on the dais, apologize to the community members that were flagged, unequivocally denounce the attacks, and condemn the community members who participated. This is 3 months, and I haven't heard anything. Anti-family. What decisions are appropriate for a 7-year-old to make? What about a parent-teacher conference? The excuse is that parents may not support the child. A justification that is not usually based on staff's interaction with the parent. This may be the first day of school, but more likely from the single point of view of a young, emotionally immature student with a partially connected frontal lobe. Can anyone name one other issue in which the school does not notify the parent of an issue concerning their child? Parental approval is needed for Tylenol, but not for transgenderism. We are failing the family because we know better than they do. Anti-privacy. 3 years ago, I met with the Gay Student Alliance Club, and they told me they wanted 2 things. They wanted to be safe. I heard that. I agree with that. I will do everything I can to keep them safe. And they didn't want to have to cross an entire school to get to a bathroom. I agree with that. I fully support that, and I will work to that. Their request was not about opening up showers or forcing kids to share hotel rooms or school board proclamations. That was the impetus behind my request as the chair of the Finance Committee 3 years ago to design schools with unisex single occupancy facilities. Unfortunately, the board's priorities changed and social justice policies moved much faster than our school facility upgrades and construction efforts. And now, without time to implement changes, we are forcing the issue with open locker rooms, dressing areas, and shower facilities. Forcing this upon our most vulnerable students at the most awkward time in their life when they are embarrassed to the changes that are going on of their own bodies. Anti-teacher. How is a teacher to provide support to a student who uses multiple sets of pronouns? How are they to reverse 50 years of reinforcement of the male and female pronouns on the fly? How many mistakes are they allowed to make before they get fired? Probably depends on how much they've embraced this movement. How do they protect a child from a different class if they don't know that they're transgendered because they cannot ask? How do they face a parent at a parent-teachers conference knowing they are responsible to not reveal the big secret? It's inconsistent with VHSL. VHSL set limits on both the transition time and the hormone levels under which biological males can play female sports. This is not compatible with the intent of 8040, and the state exclusion of VHSL from the law is clearly legally indefensible. An embarrassing omission by our legislative friends in Richmond who didn't want to address the sports issue. It is only a matter of time before a legal challenge ensues, yet we are pushing ahead full. The stories we heard from transgender speakers last night were horrifying. Stories of bullying and harassment. They're stinging indictments of a school division from years past. Comparing that to today's classroom in today's workforce is like comparing technology of 1980 to today's technology. Our teachers, administrators, and counselors are well trained to identify issues and provide emotional support to students. But this board is losing teachers like Laura Morris, teachers that I want to teach my children, teachers that you should want to teach your children, whether they are transgender, whether they are cisgendered, whatever they may be. Our teachers are not monsters who pick on at-risk kids, and they don't need to be told to love their students. They already do. A couple final comments. The push to remove classroom libraries has nothing to do with allowing students to identify with characters and has everything to do with the pornographic sensationalism that these authors are using to lure in our children. They are quality books that are diverse. There are quality books that are diverse that don't have these award-winning, acclaimed trash novels that are nothing but filth that are going into our classrooms and into our children's hands. We need to have our children see themselves in books, all of our children, and we all agree on that. And that didn't come out of the Community Levy Association, that came out of me. But the bottom line is, our children need to see themselves. Don't listen to the vocal minority. Boy, I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten that email. Wow. Now imagine it was 5 years ago and we were talking about issues like this and the transgender community came forward and they were vocal. Would I not listen to them? I will always listen to the minority, vocal or not. And for us to ignore a segment of the population is for us to not do our job. This policy meets the minimum state requirements. No, this policy goes well beyond the state's model policy. Policy is not needed. Policy does not solve the issues it's purported to solve. The policy has forced our focus out of education, and I will not support it. Thank you.